Welcome to the Egg Whisperer Show. The title of today's show is Getting to Baby, a food-first fertility plan to improve your odds and shorten time to pregnancy with my special guests, Dr. Angela Thayer and Judy Simon. Welcome.
Thanks, Amy. It's great to be here.
Thank
Happy
you
to be here.
And I'm so excited. We've been talking about the launch of your book for so long, and I can see how much time and effort and research went into this book. I'm so honored to have you both on to talk about getting to baby. As a fertility specialist, Dr. Thayer, and a reproductive health nutritionist, Judy Simon, you're uniquely qualified to create this kind of practical, step-by-step blueprint from two experts for fertility patients. What I'd love for you to do is share with our listeners about your background and how you work together.
Just like you, I'm a reproductive endocrinologist and fertility specialist. And initially, my training I did my clinical research with women who have polycystic ovary syndrome. And that area of like working, understanding metabolism and the endocrine system and how everything functions together, and then some of the impacts of diet really started when I was doing studies during my fellowship at the University Health Science Center in San Antonio. And so from there, when I moved to the University of Washington, I was looking for somebody to continue this work and begin to collaborate with me. And Judy and I found each other. We had a lot of patients in common, and we both had this common understanding of how food and nutrition can impact the metabolic system, the endocrine system, patients with PCOS, other patients with endometriosis, and other aspects of infertility. And so we started working together way back when at the University of Washington.
Yes, in my journey, I had been a dietitian and had moved to Seattle. But prior to that, I had a long journey with my own fertility. And it was about 7 years until we conceived my daughter, totally in that unexplained, category. In the frustration and with the help with a great OBGYN, we did finally conceive using IUI. And then when we moved to Seattle, change in environment perhaps, I conceived our son. But when I went back into working in nutrition, PCOS just like popped in my face. And I couldn't believe all these young women that had been on birth control because of their irregular cycles, no diagnosis. I was seeing all these women coming off the pill and they weren't ovulating. They were trying to get pregnant. And that's when I had to go to the next building to meet Angela and her colleagues and say, like, how do we help these women? Why are they gaining weight? Why are they hirsute? Why can't they get pregnant? And really understanding the role of lifestyle. And so as we went on, Angela and I went on to different venues, we could say, and we decided that let's bring these women together. Let's bring them in our semi kitchen that we put together in the staff room at SRM. And let's not just say eat healthy. Let's do it. Let's cook together. Let's learn together. Let's plan together. And Amy, there was no template. We just like did this. Angela's a medical director. I'm also a health educator. That's my master's degree. And the women loved it. And so that's where these stories come from in our book, the women that we worked with over that 12 years that we did the class live, and then we did a few years virtual. And really our plan was we need to reach more people. They need more solid information to help them with getting to a healthy pregnancy and getting to their baby.
Yeah, and for our audience who buys the book, and I really hope you will, you'll read lovely stories from different patients and what they went through and how the book and their experience with both of you also helped them reach their goals. So I love that about your book. You also reference that the fastest, healthiest way to baby is through the kitchen. How does food support fertility?
The other thing that kind of evolved over time was just as we were talking to women and couples about what they were eating, a lot of people just weren't really sure. They were, maybe eating low carb, maybe cutting out gluten, maybe cutting out dairy, weren't sure why they were doing it, maybe taking so many supplements and not really understanding what the role of those were. So we really wanted to refocus the program on food first to understand how food actually provides most of what we need for our health and well-being, including our fertility. So obviously people can choose a range of different eating styles, which is why this book isn't really prescriptive. It doesn't say one thing for every person, but it says based on where you're eating, How can you make sure you're getting everything you need? Maybe you do need some supplements if you're missing one particular micronutrient or mineral from a particular type of diet, but we want people to know most of what people can get is going to be through the kitchen and through food, and usually that means cooking, which is a little bit of a leap with people's busy schedules, time being such a short commodity for most people that learning to cook at home efficiently and understand how to put ingredients together and make them taste delicious was really key to like having more nutrients in your diet and better fertility.
And then in the book, you have this section that I love, the blueprint, your 6-week guide. You can follow it step by step. It's really easy, even for me to follow. I really, when I get home, the only button I know how to push is the microwave start button. But I was like, I could totally do this. And these recipes look delicious.
Yeah, and I wanted to add, Amy, a lot of people are hearing, more about nutrition and fertility. We have had some studies that have come out that have really supported this. But I think what's important is we want everyone to feel included, no matter what their budget is. I don't want them to think that unless it's organic and that's the only thing they can eat. We want to be really practical. And we try to include all global cuisine because so often people just hear, Mediterranean, it's a perfect thing. Well, when you say that to a patient who's South Asian, which many of my patients are, they're like, well, we eat a lot of dals. Is that okay? We're like, yeah, that's lentils. An Indian diet is amazing. And we work from that. So we tried to be very global in the book. And we also put a lot of kitchen tips in. So things that are just really easy, how you can cook without a recipe, how you can meal prep. And with that 6-week template, what we thought is for some people, that might be a 12-week. They might say, hey, you know what? I'm going to work on one of these a few weeks at a time. And in fact, when the class went from live to virtual, we started doing every other week and we received really positive feedback from the patients. They go, oh, gives us a little bit more time to work on that. I'm going to work on trying a whole grain or adding in a lentil dish. It gives me a little bit more time to do it. So we thought this could give the book a little bit of flexibility for folks to work on their own time frame.
And I also want to point out there's nowhere in your book that says eliminate dairy, eliminate gluten,
Correct.
eliminate meat. You talk about lusty legumes and going fish. And when I was like lusty legumes, I'm like, that sounds very sexy. So the
That's
book
right.
is like written in a fun way. I mean, don't get me wrong, it's dense, but you can tell that it is written by two experts in the field, people that we should trust.
We spent so much time with people, mainly women, talking that to them about their diets and their fertility. And so we kind of know what works. And one thing that we found works is that if you are trying to change anything in your diet or incorporate some foods that maybe you haven't tried before, doing it more slowly is way more successful. So we talk about setting small individual goals, like trying one new food or one new recipe every week. And that doesn't overwhelm you. And it also helps you feel in control and you can have fun with it. It's like a fun part of just experimenting with new cuisines, new spices, new foods, all that, and then sharing that with friends or family, whoever you have. It's a diet that's good forever, right? So we talk about how your nutrition, this lasts forever into pregnancy and beyond, and when you have kids and when you are getting older. So these practical tips of a healthy kind of with a lot of plants in it because we need those antioxidants and it's really good for the gut, but also says, hey, you can eat meat, you can be vegetarian, you can do all sorts of things, but we kind of tell you how to make that best work for fertility.
Yeah. And you also talk about alcohol and environmental toxins and give scientifically based advice on both of those things. So I appreciate both those sections a lot. And I think my patients should be reading them too.
Oh, the
So,
disruptors, right. So,
yeah,
yeah, this book was gonna be twice as long, Amy, and then our publisher said, "No, no, no. People want a book this size," do you know what I mean? That they can get through, which we've gotten good feedback. So we shrank it down that we have that disruptor, so people would have, like, just short and sweet, what do we know about alcohol, caffeine, cannabis, BPA? And then we have boosters, how to deal with stress, get better sleep, movement. So we thought, we really took a lifestyle approach too. And I think that's important. And as you know, probably the two most common reasons a woman goes to a fertility clinic is for PCOS and endometriosis. So, if we're helping the health of their entire body, we're helping them with glycemic control, if they have insulin resistance, reducing inflammation, that's going to help improve the quality of their gametes, their eggs and sperm. It's going to help a better uterine environment. And we're going to not only help improve their fertility, but hopefully decrease risk for miscarriage and loss, especially as people are older. We're seeing older women, and we've got to have everything on their side. That's what I tell them. I go, if you can spend 3 months nourishing your body, that will add to your chances for increased success. Of course, I wish we could promise everyone, but
Yeah.
we've seen so many good results, and there's no bad side effects because people are going to be healthy. They're going to improve their insulin resistance and their high blood pressure if they have any chronic diseases they need to manage too.
I mean, one of the most common questions I ask is, what should I eat? What should I stay away from? And now I say, just get Judy and Angela's book. It's all there. So let's talk about that a little bit more. What should people eat more of while trying to conceive?
There are lots and we can cover them all. But the number one thing is more fruits and vegetables. So it's really well recognized that people in general, our population in general, tends not to eat enough fruits and vegetables. One thing is because they take a little bit more effort to, most people aren't eating raw vegetables all the time. So they take a little work to make them pretty, prep them, make them beautiful, make them taste good. And so spending time saying if half your plate can be fruits and vegetables, that's going to give you the antioxidants you need, which are so important to help the cells and the mitochondria, the cellular processes, help free radical formation and reduce oxidative stress. So these antioxidants and fruits and vegetables is for sure, I would say, are number one, which is why we start with that at the beginning of the book. Leafy greens, cruciferous vegetables, and then we go through all the colors, right? Kind of color coded to say, like, okay, the purples and blues, like the anthocyanins, how important those are, and kind of break it down both by like, here's a food group, here's how they help your fertility, here's some great recipes incorporating these particular foods.
Yeah. And then what about what should they eat less of? Are there any foods someone who's trying to conceive should avoid?
Well, I would say the less of is probably the really ultra processed. And what I mean is, if people are always for snacks taking something out of the bag that probably has no fiber, very little plants, maybe a lot of added fat and salt, where maybe would say like, gosh, if you had those veggies ready or some roasted chickpeas, there's other like you could eat popcorn and that would be a healthier, crunchy snack. Popcorn is, salt and oil and grains, right? So we do talk about trying to move away from less ultra processed. Now we're not saying no process because none of us are probably milling our grain and making our bread from scratch. You don't have to. That's okay. But, really trying to eat more real food. And I want to give you the example. So, like in the grains, we're really, something we found out from classes, people eat a lot of rice, potatoes, and noodles because they're fast and easy. And then when you introduce them to things like, hey, try quinoa, try farro, try these other whole grains that have so much more fiber, so many more nutrients and they're like, "But they're carbs." But what we can share with them is besides the benefits of the fiber, people live longer who eat more ancient grains, right? And they have inositols. And so for the women that are trying to improve their insulin resistance, like, hey, you know what? You make some inositols, but you get it from your whole grains, like soba noodles, maybe. So we try to show some of the switches. How can you go towards maybe using more of the whole grains and some of the ultra processed would be one example of things to kind of eat less of. And I think I don't want to knock eating out because, we should enjoy dining out, but I think it's the frequency and the choices people make. And often it's a burger place, then it's like, well, make sure you're making up all the fruits and veggies that you didn't get that meal. Do you know what I mean? If it's like every day they're doing it versus like occasionally we like to go out for a nice burger, that might be a little bit different. So I would kind of say the ultra processed are the ones we would like them to have less of and going more with the whole grains. And then of course we are big promoters of the lusty legumes, the beans and the lentils. The thing is, once you get someone to try something? Like, I had a patient who said, her husband goes, I am never eating beans, but he loves chili. So I go, why don't you puree the beans, put them in the sauce, make it spicy with some tomatoes? She said he loved it. He goes, it was better than usual. What did you do? And she goes, I added beans. He goes, oh, I guess beans are okay. So we want to help to be practical on how to emphasize the positive instead of, the negative that people are hearing so much.
Yeah. And you just brought up how you talk to people one on one, Judy. I just want to bring up how I refer my patients to you
You do.
for fertility nutrition coaching and guidance.
Mhm.
And so
Mhm.
you do nutrition consults for me. Can you just talk a little bit about that?
Well, sure. So when I see someone on a one-on-one basis, I try to find out as much information. I have them fill out a questionnaire, tell me about a little bit of their likes and dislikes. I have this special question. I ask them to rate their diet, what they think. And no matter what number, if they tell me it's a 3 or a 7, I'm like, why isn't it 1 higher? Like using some motivational interviewing and finding out because they will share with me where they think they fall short, right? And then find out about their lifestyle, where they are in their reproductive journey. If they tell me, Amy, like, okay, I have a retrieval in 1 month, we're like, okay, what changes are realistic that aren't going to stress you out? I don't want someone to feel like they're going to be throwing everything out of their cupboard. Someone say, what truly easy? You got frozen veggies? You want to put those in your air fryer? Great. You can pick up salads from Evergreen that have grain. So I try to be as practical as possible with people. And of course, sometimes they've even told me they read the book already, which is great because they have a good background. But I really try to be practical and non-judgmental. And then when I follow up with them, I always ask them first, how do you feel? And they're like, hey, I'm pooping like a champ. I'm eating more fiber. My gut's feeling good. I have more energy. Because there's a lot of women, they're trying to like intermittent fast, cut out gluten, all this stuff. And I'm like, that that's that's restrictive. We're talking about a time in your life you're preparing for pregnancy. You wanna make sure put the focus on, like, how you go and get a massage. Put the focus on you prepare to buy a house. You have to prepare in a positive way for your fertility and pregnancy. Get your partner on board. Even if you can get those guys to eat nuts and eat some of the foods that you're eating, they're gonna get a benefit. They're always building their sperm. So I try to be practical, meet them where they're at. And I spend a lot of time with like recipes and the culinary skills. Do you want to spend time in the kitchen? Oh, if not, what's easy things you could put together from Trader Joe's? I mean, meet people where they're at, and they're so much more likely to feel empowered and not overwhelmed because they got a lot of visits when they're going through. Your patients, when I see them, they're like, deep into the IVF journey and they got a timeline. So it's like, what's practical?
Yeah. And let's say you see someone who has PCOS or endometriosis. Do you have any special food tips for them?
Yeah, everything we've been talking about, the fruits, the veggies, fish. If they'll eat fish, right, Angela, we want to go fishing with them. We
Right.
try to really up the omega 3s, and those will help with being anti inflammatory. Plus, if you look at any studies that have been done on fertility, they look at the couples and they see that the couples that have been eating fish 2 to 3 servings a week have a shorter time to conception, better outcomes in IVF. So we have a lot of fish data if they eat it. If not, we go for seeds and nuts and maybe a plant-based omega-3 if they're not a fish eater. I really try to help them with anti-inflammatory, more fiber. And I think it's important for listeners to know that when you have a healthy gut biome and you're getting enough fiber, that can help balance some of the excess estrogen and it can be beneficial. And we have more nutrition studies have done on PCOS and endometriosis. Unfortunately, endometriosis is the sad sister that needs more research. But with PCOS, we have the diet research that eating tofu, eating vegetables actually improves the biomarkers. You don't have to be vegetarian, but more plant centered really makes a difference. And protein is important in PCOS and balancing meals. Like, I don't want my patients to just snack on carbs all day. I want them to have the apple and peanut butter, the hummus and veggies. We want to have that balance. We do want to have adequate protein. You can get a lot of it from plants. We're big egg pushers are great sources of choline for pregnancy. If women eat eggs, we try to encourage them to have 3 to 7 eggs a week, healthy fats. So really trying to be anti-inflammatory for both of those, less processed, more whole foods, sleep. Sleep's important too with all of our patients.
And then when you say seeds and nuts, what are your favorite go-to seeds and nuts that you recommend?
First, I find out what they like, almonds, but I do tell them Brazil nuts, which are not always the most popular nut in the mix. Like you eat one and it's all the selenium you need for the day. Super great for sperm.
Just one, just one.
Just one, right? One Brazil nut. So I tell women and men at least a quarter of a handful of nuts and seeds, whatever they like. If you saw, we have recipes. We love chia seeds to put in our homemade smoothies and in chia pudding. And we also have one smoothie recipe because we're like, you don't have to use protein powders. You can use yogurt or plant-based milk and nut butters and fruit, and you can make and vegetables like kale, make amazing healthy smoothies that aren't processed at all. Just with food in your favorite foods, frozen berries, stuff like that that you can have all year round. Oats, we put oats in our smoothies. Yeah, so things like that. But any nuts, almond seeds, they all have a great profile. Angela, what's your favorite nut?
I love walnuts. I eat almost every day, right? And then we talk about pistachios having all the essential amino acids, pecans, macadamia nuts, you name it. A variety, mixing it up is good to add different nuts. And that's a great snack too. When people think about snacks, having some whole nuts is a great option.
Yeah,
So
I try
that
to get people who live on bars and protein drinks. I'm like, how about that little container of nuts and a piece of fruit, like to replace one of your protein bars? You're gonna really get the real food and you get the benefits, and they taste a lot better too. And we're not against having emergency snacks because that's important too. But nuts fit the bill there too to keep in your drawer.
Yeah. And so you do have recipes in Getting to Baby. Do you have plans for a separate cookbook as well? Is that coming soon?
Maybe we'll see.
maybe we're always working on recipes and we occasionally have pop-up classes and try out new recipes with folks. So it is fun. I think I also have done a little bit of chef training to try to increase the deliciousness of the food because I feel like that's such a big part of wanting to eat differently or experiment is like having fun in the kitchen and knowing you might not like everything you make, but try some things and especially if you're trying to get some of these different food groups into your diet that you maybe haven't thought of before, like lentils or beans or certain vegetables or the whole grains, the ancient grains that we talk about. So I think, we definitely have talked about whether we would do a full-on cookbook if there's interest.
I do want you listeners to know that as we help folks build their families, they have children. And so what I tell them is you are setting the table for when you become parents. And a lot of the patients I work with, they're working on their second child. So we talk about how their kids work into it. And this is kind of a fun little thing. One of the very first fertility classes I work with, they just got in touch with me lately. They still have their own Facebook page. Okay, their kids are like 8, 9, and 10 years old. Okay, this is how long ago it was, and we're gonna get together for a picnic next month. But for a while, for several years, I did food for moms, and I worked with the moms and the little kids, and it was up till COVID that we did that, and we would meet in parks and things like that, and they would talk about, some of them had their food struggles growing up, and as parents, they wanted to help their kids be healthier. So we kind of feel like it's for your fertility, your pregnancy, and for when you're starting your family, building a foundation, and that's really gonna make a difference in the health of those children.
100%. Absolutely. And I just want to go back to a practical tip. And in your book, you have a lot about grain bowls. Can you just touch on that a little bit? Because you do have recipes in the book. You'll get your recipe fix from the book. But I love grain bowls. There's this one restaurant that I go to only for their grain bowl. But I appreciate that you actually talk about that in the book and describe ways of making them at home.
Grain bowls are so versatile, right? I mean, they're great because you can take whatever grain you have on hand. We love the quinoa, we love the farro, but brown rice barley, bulgur, millet, whatever you have for your grain, a green. So your greens could be salad greens, whatever salad greens. You can go to a restaurant that has these, or you can just say, what's in my refrigerator today? And just pull out a bunch of random things, cut up some raw vegetables. Maybe you cook or blanch some greens if it's more like a kale or a chard or mustard green, collard greens, maybe if it's salad greens, and then something with some color. So adding some color in, adding some crunch, maybe some nuts, and just making it delicious. And then for your protein, we use a lot of tofu, tempeh, fish. You can use like tinned fish, like sardines, if you want to do something, or tuna if you're trying to get your fish up. You can use chicken if you have that left over. So whatever you have, and just make these components of this bowl and then vary it. And then if you want to make a drizzle of a dressing, you can do a vinaigrette. You can do a miso lemon, miso garlic, tahini garlic. So you can make these delicious, different themed types of bowls. We love sweet potatoes on bowls too. So great.
We've done it all in bowls. I'd say in our virtual classes the last few years, we would always have them make like 4 bowls because then if I had a partner, they could eat it and literally people will start eating them in class, which is great. And then we go, okay, now you have 2 for tomorrow. So when you make a bowl, Amy, make more than 1 bowl, like while you're setting them up. And I think probably the most popular dressing, and I think we have one in here, was like tahini dressings, really quick, tahini, olive oil, lemon. And then you're like, wow, this is what you pay $20, $25 for in a restaurant. And I just made 3 of these at home and they're delicious. You could put the seeds in nuts and they're really fun to have. Put them in a mason jar. Now we're big on grain bowls. We're big on sheet pan meals with like sweet potatoes or fish or chicken and broccoli, things like that, that people could get the whole meal idea together because it does take time. And I've done other cooking classes. I'm like, okay, that was 2 hours to make dinner. Our patients don't have 2 hours. We have to like make it easier for most of them. And they really appreciate that.
Yeah, and I appreciate these practical tips as well because you're sharing with us how to make this transition easy and supporting them on their fertility journey as well. So, what are some key takeaways you hope readers will gain from your book?
We have 10 of them, right? They're on our remember them by heart. What are our keys, Angela?
Well, eat the rainbow. Protein and fiber. Kind of, we talk about protein and fiber actually can come together if you eat beans or lentils. A lot of people think protein is only meat and fiber is only vegetables, but the legume category actually has both. So that's great. You can get both in one package. We talk about soy because a lot of people are afraid to eat soy, but soy, in most of the studies that have been reported, people who incorporate soy, which might be edamame, it might be tofu, actually show higher fertility rates. So that's another thing that if people haven't tried, it's easy to experiment with that as a novel protein source. And then fish, nuts, spices.
Yep, spices. Oh, yeah, I found our 10 here. Discover your grains. We do have 10. Oh, cook with extra virgin olive oil. It's monounsaturated fat. It tastes delicious. Oh, Angela, you had a good one in here. The boost it. This isn't food, but walk for 10 minutes at least 3 times a day, lowering the glycemic effects of and of inflammation too. So we try
Right.
to.
Exercise and movement is another thing we encourage people to do because it lowers inflammations, it lowers a glucose spike. A lot of people are aware that after a meal, especially a meal that contains some carbohydrates, you might have an increase in your glucose and then insulin. And so if you do something simple like walking for 10 minutes after a meal, you can blunt that response and blunt the highs. So you blunt the spike, it helps your mitochondria. And so that's simple. If you don't have time to say work out in a block, 10 minutes after every meal is great. It's an easy thing to do and it really helps your metabolism.
So, where can people find your book and find you both?
Well, they can find our book on any major bookseller, like Amazon, Barnes and Nobles, all the major sites, and a lot of the libraries. We wrote this book to make it accessible to everyone. I got on my library last night. I saw there were holds on it. I was so excited. I'm like, yes, people are taking our book out. So that made me feel really good. Angela and I are both on Instagram. I'm at Fertile Nutrition. And Angela, you
I'm
were.
Angela Thayer MD, so on Instagram or a website. So those are good places. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, and we're happy to answer questions, especially on Instagram. It's great because when you send questions, more people are able to take advantage of that.
Yeah. And is there anything else you'd like to add before we go?
Well, I would just say we want people to have fun in the kitchen, have fun with food. Know that it's a wonderful part of our lives to broaden and expand current traditions that you have around food and eating, and know that what you can do is going to enhance your health and your fertility.
The same ditto, part of your journey that we all need to eat. Let's love what we eat. Let's enjoy it. Let's have fun. Let's get our partners and our family involved and our friends involved, and never to feel bad or negative about a choice that you make. It's all a big picture. Yes.
Big picture. Well, thank you so much, both of you, for joining me. You've been on my show many times, and I'm so glad that we can do this again today. Thank you
Oh,
so much.
thanks. Thanks, Amy.